Let's start here. The deification of Kamala Harris is in full swing. You've probably noticed. At this point, if you're a regular mainstream media consumer, you'd be forgiven for mistaking Kamala as a literal saint, given that title while she is still living by Pope Francis himself. Oh, not only that, she is really cool and hip too. Those are the new talking points being broadcast all over America, and it will not be slowing down anytime soon. So, how did Kamala Harris go from a laughing stock, someone who was even more unpopular than Joe Biden, someone who was seen as incredibly incompetent, even by her own party, to now the savior of democracy here and worldwide? Well, it's because she's running against Donald Trump, of course, even if it is by accident, or Joe Biden's FU to Obama and company, which is exactly what it was, in my opinion. At this point, if you can't see how the media is lying to help one party, the Democrats, then I have beachfront property to sell you in a rapidly heating earth where the sea levels are rising and the polar ice caps are melting. Oh, wait. Democrats are still buying beachfront property. Maybe that's another lie as well. Quite sure. But anyway, the point is this. These people are liars. They used to be kind of good at it, actually, but as the mask has slipped off little by little by little, and as Americans have woken up to the lies and misinformation, they're becoming surprisingly bad at it. Really bad, actually. Take the whole border czar narrative. The media now say Kamala was never the border czar at all. But they themselves said she was over and over and over. Did they forget, or are they just lying? You tell me.
Quote unquote border czar. Vice President Harris was not a border czar.
Meantime, Vice President and border czar Kamala Harris facing some backlash.
What he said about Harris and immigration was not true. She was never appointed border czar.
And this will be her first visit to the U.S.-Mexico border region since she was appointed as the border czar by President Biden.
People are going to have to counter the misinformation. You already hear folks talking about the border czar. She wasn't the border czar.
President Biden tapped Kamala Harris, Vice President Kamala Harris, to be the border czar.
Now, she wasn't the border czar. That's what Republicans labeled her.
They were very critical of Kamala Harris, especially in her role as border czar.
Now what she's up against is folks lying about her border record, calling her a border czar.
Kamala Harris, who was appointed as the border czar.
The Biden team didn't declare her the border czar. They wanted her to work on kind of the root causes of immigration.
There has been so much criticism against Kamala Harris. You know, she was the border czar.
Calling her sort of the border czar, which wasn't necessarily the case.
So the border, if they weren't planning to address it in a major way, do not make her your border czar. She met with some of the Northern Triangle countries, but nothing has effectively changed.
Yeah, it was Republicans that labeled her the border czar. The Republicans and all their close personal friends in the national news media, apparently. I mean, Soviet Russia lied better than this. Kim Jong-un's North Korea does too. And let me say this. Kim learned to drive at the age of 3. His father, Kim Jong-il, scored a 38 under par in his first ever round of golf. And they're better at lying than the media is today, and Kamala Harris. It's like the media and the Democrats, though they are both the same thing really at this point, don't care at all that there's video evidence proving everything they say is BS. Like the clip I just showed you. Oh, and President Biden putting VP Harris in charge of immigration, which he did. Listen.
I've asked her, the VP today, because she's the most qualified person to do it, to lead our efforts with Mexico and the Northern Triangle and the countries that help. We're going to need help in stemming the movement of so many folks stemming the migration to our southern border.
You don't have to take my word that she's the border czar. Take Joe Biden's word. So there's that. But there's a lot more, unfortunately, because instead of just trying to lie about how cool and great and smart Kamala is now, they're going back in time and rewriting history to get rid of all those problematic things about Harris that, well, wouldn't really appeal to independent voters, like the border, for example, like I just explained. She's also said things like this about immigration. Listen to this.
It is wrong to somehow suggest that an undocumented immigrant is a criminal. Being an undocumented immigrant is not a crime.
I know what a crime looks like. An undocumented immigrant is not a criminal.
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 An undocumented immigrant is not a criminal. An undocumented immigrant is not a criminal. An undocumented immigrant is not a criminal. An undocumented immigrant is not a criminal. An undocumented immigrant An undocumented immigrant is not a criminal. An undocumented immigrant is not a criminal.
An undocumented immigrant is not a criminal, and we have to correct course in this conversation.
We're not going to treat people who are undocumented across the border as criminals. That's correct.
A person who came into the country illegally and broke the law to be here is not illegal. This from a former prosecutor. I don't think their attempt to relieve Harris of any responsibility for the border is going to work, do you? But the lies about her are just so blatant. Any Americans who actually watch the media nowadays honestly should feel upset because they're just showing you how much they think of you. They think you're an imbecile. They think you're too stupid to figure it out. Take this from a local CBS affiliate in Minnesota. They now say that Trump falsely accuses Kamala of donating to the Minnesota Freedom Fund and bailing out dangerous criminals. This is the stuff you're going to see for the next 100 days. They're going to try to paint Trump as the one who is lying, which in this case is, of course, completely false. Kamala did ask people to donate to the Minnesota Freedom Fund to help post bail for rioters in Minnesota during the BLM fiery but mostly peaceful protest. Trying to call Trump's statement a lie because there's no evidence Kamala herself directly contributed to the fund except, well, you know, just directly asking people to donate to it. And then there was a criminal released on bail from the fund, Sean Michael Tillman, who went on to murder a man in St. Paul after being released. He was arrested, bailed out some 2 years after the George Floyd riots, but the Minnesota Freedom Fund was the group that got him out of jail. Kamala was clearly asking people to donate to it, to release people like him and violent rioters who were burning down the property. That's the kind of stuff you're going to see. That headline had two objectives: paint Donald Trump as a liar and absolve Kamala of any responsibility over the George Floyd riots because they are largely seen in a negative light across the country. You see, they need to make Kamala look a lot more moderate than she actually is. That's why websites like GovTrack that previously rated then Senator Kamala Harris of California the most liberal of all 100, the most liberal compared to all other senators, including people like, say, Bernie Sanders, an avowed socialist, and suddenly making that stuff just disappear. Whew. Here was GovTrack's post about it before Harris and now she was running for president with the endorsement of Joe Biden. And here it is now. Conveniently deleted, nothing suspicious, nothing to see here. Wow. CNN also working overtime to debunk that Kamala is extremely liberal, bringing Bernie Sanders on to say so. For real, listen.
I have to ask you about something that Donald Trump said at a rally tonight when he was attacking Vice President Harris. He said she is, quote, more liberal than Bernie Sanders. Is that how you would put it?
Probably not. It is just possible for the 83rd time that Trump is lying. No, I don't think that is the case. I think that the vice president had a very strong record in the U.S. Senate, strong record working with President Biden in the administration. But no, I don't quite think that her record is where mine is in terms of being progressive.
But it was. Sorry, Bernie, you weren't the most progressive socialist communist there was. Sorry. Now, do they actually think that's going to work? I mean, honestly, what all of this has been showing me is that these people are extremely bad at lying. They just can't do it anymore. They've lost their edge. They've lost that magic touch. It's because the lies need to keep being more and more ridiculous and more outrageous for the narrative to continue. And eventually, well, you can't go to that well forever. It'll fall apart. I believe that's what we're seeing now. They've gone to the well too many times. And that is why the media is falling back on their tried and true narrative. Racism. Of course they are. Here it is.
What you're seeing in this particular moment is a collision of two different things. You have the patriarchy and then the changing demographics in this country. And while we often talk about the browning of America, we don't talk enough about how the fact that the browning of America, the majority of that emerging majority and demographic shift is women of color. In 2014, Maya Harris, Kamala Harris's sister, wrote a paper for the Center for American Progress talking about how Black Latinx and AAPI women are going to be a growing force in the American electorate. That was 10 years ago. And right now, we're living through the manifestation of that demographic shift, Michael. And I think that what you're seeing from these men who are espousing this toxic masculinity is essentially the last throes, right? We're in the last throes of this moment where this white male patriarch is the president and they tell us what to do and we have to listen. And I think women are just not going to take it anymore.
Man, you need a score sheet to keep up with all the identity politics there. You know, toxic masculinity, Latinx, a term, by the way, that Hispanic people hate completely. Every Hispanic person I know, including the one that I'm married to, can't stand that term. Just saying, all right? But don't you say that Kamala is a DEI pick. Don't you say that. Because even though the left is saying it's great she was picked because she's black, and they're celebrating that she could beat a white guy for president when she's a woman, you see, only they are allowed to talk about race and gender. If you bring it up, you're racist, a misogynist. But as I've been saying for a while now on this program, the race card doesn't work anymore as much either. Case in point.
Most African Americans know that the illegals' benefit card is worth more than our worthless black card. So why would we care about who Kamala Harris is, about her race or her gender? We care about the policies that she has pushed with Joe Biden for the past 3.5 years. We are struggling. We can't even make ends meet. You talked about retirement earlier. I have to work till I'm 70 years old in order to get my full retirement. So, no, Black America is not supporting Kamala Harris, all right? Her color has nothing to do with the failed policies that she has championed and stood on for 3.5 years.
Yeah. The black card isn't worth anything. She's absolutely right. And the media knows it, too. That's why you're seeing stuff like this from Politico. Kamala Harris faces greater security risks because she's a woman and person of color. Oh, good grief. The Secret Service is almost certainly taking that into account. Are these people sober at the job site? That tweet coming after President Trump was literally shot during a rally on July 13th. But no, it's Kamala Harris who's in danger because she's black and a woman. Give me a break. But even though the media is getting ridiculously bad at lying and persuasion, we still need to stay on guard. There's a world where Kamala Harris could win and become president. And yes, there has been a bounce for Kamala nationally. Not as dramatic as I'd like to tell you, maybe a point or two. But do not underestimate the most transactional politician of my lifetime. She will do anything, say anything, and be anything to win and to have power. How utterly sad is that? And how sad is it for the media to go right along with it?